Welcome everyone to Effing with the Ineffable. I am Zoe,
And I am Smokey Pangleton.
aka Will.
It's my stage name.
Yeah. And welcome back to our show. Today we are going to be talking about Lent, but I also wanted to talk about, there's actually like two other feast days this week that I thought are interesting that my family is celebrating, at least. So there's a lot of like stuff going on in Catholic land.
Related to Lent or not?
No.
Oh.
There's actually like pretty much four feasts in this, like in the span of a week that we're celebrating. So,
chow down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then Lent starts, and it's like fasting for 40 days.
Stop chowing down.
Yeah. So we'll get into it, but first of all, what's been happening with you?
Not too much. Still on code orange at work. Got my COVID test the other day. Tickled my upper sinuses, and as far as I know, I'm clean because they haven't told me to quarantine or anything like that.
Well, and you got the vaccine too, right?
I did get the first vaccine. We'll get the second vaccine here in probably 2 weeks.
Are you nervous about that? Because one of my sisters said that apparently a lot of people are getting sick from this.
I'm not nervous about it. If it kills me, at least I've done what I can for society.
Yeah, of course. Hey, at least if it kills you, then you really won't be spreading COVID to anyone.
I'll be a super not spreader. I'll be a...
Oh my gosh.
I'll stop breathing everybody else's air and drinking everybody else's coffee.
I hope that doesn't happen. Did you watch any movies this week at work?
I did not watch any movies. I dedicated myself to watching, I did my taxes. I also got on Craigslist and listed all of our older cars. I listed 3 cars for sale. So that's something else I got going on. Get rid of all those old cars, and because I want I want a new vehicle that's of a different kind. I want a truck, 4-wheel drive truck that has preferably a long bed, but not necessarily a crew cab.
All right.
And it doesn't have to be in good shape. It can be ugly.
Because you just use it mainly to haul stuff around.
I'm not looking for status. I'm looking for function here.
Yeah. You use it to haul wood around because you have a wood burning stove, right?
Right. Yeah. You'd be amazed at how little wood we have left already.
Really?
Yeah. That shed almost completely empty.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's kind of
anyway, cool. So I devoted myself this week to the cultural expansion of watching as much Jordan Peterson's psychological studies of the Bible as possible. And that stuff is mind-blowing. That dude is so on it.
I know. It's so good.
He can be so serious and so scientific and academic. Yeah. He can also be really funny. There's this one section where he's talking about a diner and how pathetic this diner was, and how they had to go out of their way to ruin the eggs that badly.
Yeah.
Which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
And he makes references from such broad fields. He actually talked about Quidditch at one point.
He's talked a lot about Harry Potter in like his lectures. I don't know how much in the biblical stuff, but he talked about the snitch. Yeah.
The snitch. Yeah. He said the snitch is really an archetypal representation of something. I forget what it was. Something emerging out of the chaos. But that's what he talks a lot about, chaos and order, and how paying attention, and he's got a lot of good insights. Really gets you thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
I have really I haven't found anything offensive about what he says. I don't know what he does to get people so mad at him,
Well, I
but
think a lot of it stemmed, so like his biblical stuff, and when he's talking about order and chaos, and when he's like all his stuff in 12 Rules for Life,
and maps of meaning and
yeah,
such.
almost
Yeah.
none of that stuff is really offensive. Like people will try to find things offensive about it, but really it's not.
Yeah, they're looking to tear him down.
I think it's really because of his whole, the reason he kind of got well known in the first place is because he came out strongly against this bill that was passed in Canada in 2016 called Bill C-16, which I can link a bunch of stuff about it, but
Please don't. Why?
Okay, well, if you're not, I mean, you can Google it yourself if you're interested.
I'm not. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, it was a bill that like compelled speech, basically. It was forcing you to use transgender pronouns.
Oh.
And if you didn't use the transgender pronouns, you could be fined or even, I think, potentially put in jail. So
he is saying that there is no such thing as hate speech. There are names for things, and we should call them by their proper names.
That's not even really his point.
We should respect people's concern, but you can't tell me what to say.
His basic point, what he said, like, I am a professor. If somebody asks me to use their pronouns, I will use their pronouns. But it's not the government's job to tell me what I must say, because that's when we get down the road of
totalitarianism,
and because he studied a lot of, if you watch his Maps of Meaning lectures or read Maps
he
of
talks
Meaning,
a lot about totalitarianism.
That's like kind of his fascination and like the thing that he's spent a lot of time thinking about. And he's like, I recognize the signs of that, and we are not going down that path.
He says the problem with modern society is people are not willing to see evil in the government, and people are not willing to see evil in themselves, and the tendency for everybody to become abusive and selfish, and for governments, as they accumulate power, to become more and more totalitarian.
Yeah.
And to not take a look at themselves and say, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? But instead, how do I want to continue to accumulate and exercise power?
Yeah.
And yeah.
He talks a lot about, he said like when he was kind of growing up in the, when he was kind of becoming an adult, it was around the time of like the Cold War and like issues about nuclear holocaust and all that kind of stuff.
How old is he? He's probably about my age.
I can look it up, but I mean, he was taught. It wasn't like I'm not saying like he grew up in like he was becoming an adult. He just talks a lot about how the ending of the Soviet Union and the Cold War and all that kind of stuff, about like real fears about like nuclear holocaust. Hold on, let me.
Yeah, right.
And he said like he was very disturbed by the idea of like, how could somebody, let's see,
how could an entire culture get that off track?
He was born in 62, so he's 58. He's actually younger than you.
Yeah.
He was talking about how could like, the people, how could the Nazis have, how could like regular citizens have become Nazis and like turned in their fellow citizens and all this stuff. And the
same thing in the communist China,
yeah.
and the Soviet Union.
And he kind of had to realize like he had to find the places in himself to realize like I could, like, not only I could have done that, but like I would have done those things too if I was in that situation. And then he became really interested in the whole idea of ideology, because when people are overtaken by ideology, that's when they start acting in those ways. And so he wanted to really make sure that he would never become consumed by ideology in that way. So anyway, everything Jordan Peterson has ever done is really good. I would recommend like literally everything. He's amazing. I'm really excited to read his new book, which is
He's recently had all kinds of more hullabaloo about him and his daughter, and how he had I guess he had a problem with prescription benzodiazepines for a while or something. And he's obviously he's not the second coming of Jesus. He's not perfect. He's got flaws, and he's certainly he's a human being, and he's got his own path to travel. But I tell you what, anybody who can get up and talk for 2.5 hours with about 5 PowerPoint slides as reference, and be that compelling, it makes your nervous system tingle to be in his presence, because he's so meaningful.
I went to see him in Milwaukee. I sat in the front row, and I watched him talk. And it's like when he was doing those lectures for 12 Rules for Life, he would just have a topic in mind that he wanted to talk about. He didn't have any notes, any slides at all for all of those 12 Rules for Life lectures. He would just be like thinking about a topic that he wanted to expound upon, and he would just get up and talk about it for like 2 hours, and then answer questions and meet people and shake their hand. And he was just so
You got to shake his hand?
Oh yeah, I got to shake his hand and take a picture with it. Haven't you seen the picture of me with him?
I don't remember. I might have.
Maybe I'll like insert it.
It must not have been that meaningful. He wasn't a hero to me at that point.
That's true.
That's like if you saw a picture of me with like Darnell Savage, you're like, what? Who?
I know who that. He's a football player, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a safety for the Green Bay Packers. Or Jair Alexander.
Anyway, he's had some health issues lately. His wife got diagnosed with basically terminal, like a cancer that is so rare that not a single person has like survived it past a year until her. And now she's basically completely recovered from it, which is amazing.
Really? She's in complete remission.
As far as I know, yeah, she's like completely healed from. She had like some really radical kind of surgery to fix it, I think. And the surgery had a bunch of complications, but the cancer was like completely healed as far as I know. But anyway, because that all happened, he's struggled with depression his whole life, so that he got his doctor prescribed him some benzos to deal with like the anxiety and the depression of being like, your wife's gonna die within the year. But apparently he had a reaction to the drugs. It was a reaction of the benzos with like an SSRI that he had been taking, and that reaction caused a lot of issues for him, and he ended up developing like a dependency on the benzos. When he started to withdraw from them, he got akathisia, which is like a disorder. Have you ever
a movement disorder?
It's basically like you feel it. Apparently, it's like a crawling sensation that you feel that's so unpleasant. You feel like you have to move all the time. It's like the only way to make it go away. And it's akathisia is so horrendous that a lot of people either become suicidal or they try to find some way to deal with it. And a lot of those people get misdiagnosed with schizophrenia because it's like
because it makes you crazy,
and people don't really know how to, like, doctors don't really know how to deal with it. So anyway, he had massive health issues related to that, but now he's almost completely healed. He's back to writing.
I've seen him doing podcasts now and stuff.
Yeah, which is good. So I am thinking of Jordan a lot and praying for him.
But anyway, so that's what I did this week.
We did just talk about Jordan Peterson a lot, but he has way more interesting things to say than we will ever have to say, I think. So go watch him.
Wait and see. Just you wait. Just you wait. You don't know what Smokey Pigleton's going to be up to.
So should we talk about Lent a wee bit?
Yes. Yeah. How should we talk about your week? You didn't even get to sign in.
My my weeks are never, I mean,
Taking care of children. Same old.
it's always fun and exciting.
Same old, most important job in the world.
I made a home altar this week. That was my interesting thing.
Oh, fun.
It's not really like an altar, but it's just like a little prayer area. It's right here. I won't show it because the lighting's not very good, but it's got like holy cards from people's funerals, and it's got like some rosaries that are important to me, a rosary that I bought in Italy, a statue, and some candles and holy water, and just like people I want to pray for and that kind of stuff, which has been nice.
Cool.
I
don't know if you remember mine.
Yeah. What does it say on it?
It says, everything is happening for my highest good and in accordance with divine order.
It's a good thing to remember.
I found that in my desk when I started at work over at the mental health.
Somebody had written that?
Somebody had written that on a Post-it note and left it in there.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
It's a message from the Lord to you, apparently.
It's something that I've something that I've known for a while.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was in there is like, okay, I'll keep that out.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Lord. I'll keep that at the front of my Rolodex.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a good entree into Lent.
Yeah, the only other interesting thing that happened this week, I was going to say, is my daughter had her dance recital. And
I heard about that, but I did not watch the video.
That's okay. It was an really interesting experience as a parent, because she got to the point right before, so like it was a very short kind of just an intro class to Irish step dancing. And it was just kind of like, are you interested in this? Do you like this? Because if you are, then we can recommend different like schools in the area to you. And my friend puts these classes on a couple times a year. She's done like ballet. She did Irish step dance. The next one she's doing is like traditional folk dancing. So anyway, my daughter.
Clogging?
I don't know anything about traditional folk dancing, but
you don't want to get clogging. That's like getting a Billy Bass in your house. You're going to have so much noise. You're going to say, how can I take the batteries out of that dang thing?
So anyway, but she got to right before the performance and she was like, I want to quit. I don't want to go. I don't want to do it.
Stage fright.
She was very
performance anxiety.
Yeah, she was very like, I think she was nervous because really like she was the youngest person in the class. And like if you watch the video, I'm not going to post the video, but if you watch the video, you can definitely see like she wasn't really keeping up with all the stuff because it was like a very short introduction to things. But I was really proud because I was like, it was a good lesson in like sticking to your commitments and being like, if you don't go, like your partner is not going to have anyone to dance with. And like we made this 4-week commitment. It's only 4 weeks. And like, so we really talked her through it and we were like, listen, no, you're going to be fine. Everyone's going to be up there dancing. It's not just going to be you alone, like all this stuff. So we really had to talk her through it. And she went up there and she tried her best. She did a really good job and she made like a fantastic effort. And we were so proud of her. And it was like,
good.
It made me think about like, you know, how lame those like dance performances are when you go and you see like, there's just all the kids and you're like, I don't care. I just want to see my kid. But it was like, I actually was so proud of her for like.
I sat through so many Christmas concerts.
I know.
Oh my goodness. Every Catholic school Christmas concert. At least the little ones are cute. When they get to be second, third grade, they're just squeaky and nasty.
Yeah. But I was like really proud of her. It was a really interesting experience seeing like her persevere through something and like stick through something, and like it really made me proud of her, and it made me appreciate more like the idea of just having kind of these like extracurricular activities or things that she's like committing to.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of good lessons in those things where it's like, it's not like she was the best one up there. Like, clearly she wasn't, and we're not lying about it and being like,
You don't have to be.
but she stuck with it and she did a good job, and we were really proud of her. And like, we bought her flowers to celebrate and gave her flowers, right?
I saw that picture.
And it was like, she got a special flower from us, and like her teacher gave her a little flower too. And my husband was like, yeah, if you had quit, like, you wouldn't have these flowers right now. And I was like, but the more important thing is, like, if you had quit, you wouldn't have this good feeling of like, I accomplished something, like that's really the thing that you want to get, is like that feeling of accomplishment.
And that's what Lent is all about. I'm going to keep pushing us toward Lent.
All right, let's talk about Lent.
Because life is pain, princess. Anybody who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something, right? Princess Bride. And and there's two kinds of pain. This is my analysis, which Jordan kind of spoke to a little bit too. He said you can either face things and grow through the pain, through the stress, through the challenge, through the anxiety, through the encounter with the world, and through the energy that it takes and the amount of effort that it demands from you, which is stressful. Or you can shrink from it and avoid it and try to hide from it and try to distract yourself from it and try to numb yourself to it and try to avoid dealing with it. But that's a pain too, because then you're shrinking. You're becoming, every time you shrink away from a challenge, you're less and less capable of that. And that becomes something to be afraid of instead of something to be proud of.
Well, and he would also say that you have two options. Your options are, you can pick the pain that you want to endure, or you can just deal with whatever pain comes to you. Mm-hmm. And because guess what, like you said, you can either accept it or try to hide from it, but you're still going to have pain that other way.
You can't run and you can't hide.
You can't not have pain. That's the state of being, of life, is pain.
Right.
We
live in a fallen world where we're obligated to work and struggle and have to deal with enemies, internal and external.
Mm-hmm. And when you choose the pain that you want to, that's the entire message of Jesus is, he had more to say than just this, but he said, pick up your cross and follow me. That means pick up the struggles, the things that that are causing you pain, and accept them willingly and walk toward them. Don't walk away from them. He picked up his cross and he walked toward that hill, knowing full well what was going to happen at the top of that hill. And that's our job in life. Willingly pick up our struggles, our pain, our suffering, and walk toward it, because that is the only way you can redeem it and make meaning out of it. And that is, if you go the other way, you're just going to have accomplished nothing. You're still going to be in pain, but it's not going to have any meaning for you. And assigning
like the Jonah story.
Yeah.
Jonah said, I don't want to go deal with those stupid Ninevites.
Yeah.
Those guys are awful. I'm not going to go deal with them. I'm going to run the other direction. And so he starts running the other direction, and he gets on a boat, and all of a sudden God whips up a big storm, and everybody's like, why do we have this big storm? Why are we being cursed? And everybody looked at Jonah, and he's like, yeah, it's me. So they throw him overboard, and he has to sleep in the belly of the beast for a while, and then he gets out, and then he's like, okay, I'll go to Nineveh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he had to go through all kinds of unnecessary suffering
Mhm.
to get to the part where he where his life really had meaning, where
Yeah.
his life really had value and meaning. And it's like, just go for the value and meaning in the first place and quit being a baby,
Yeah.
you
Because
know?
not only, I mean, like when we're following the will of God, God is gonna, like, what did your thing say? It's like he's always
It's in
using,
accordance, it's for my own good, and it's in accordance with divine order.
yeah, like God uses our suffering, the hardships of our life to bring about good. Like it's not just that Jonah finally accepted God's will and nothing changed externally. Like not only did he have an internal change of heart, but the first day he started going through Nineveh, people started putting on sackcloth and ashes and repented, and he saved the whole city because he finally was acting in accordance with what God
He
wanted.
didn't want to save the city. He wanted them to burn.
I mean, I
That was
don't know.
part of his problem. He didn't have love in his heart toward the Ninevites.
Yeah,
He
he at
he
least didn't have
he
enough.
judged them. He said,
Yeah,
"Oh, those guys suck.
yeah,
I'm gonna impeach them."
yeah.
And
I don't know if he actually like hated them, or I think it was
he hated them.
he at least didn't love them enough to try. I think he was kind of had this defeatist attitude of like, what am I gonna
He
be
went
able to
out
do?
of his way to avoid helping them.
And
That's like
I think in the
that's
story
at that's at least like in the Good Samaritan story, the guy who walks to the other side of the street and says, "I don't want to deal with that.
yeah, yeah,
Too much. I got things to do.
yeah,
Wasn't planning on helping somebody today." Well, plan on it. It's
yeah.
what God put in your way. Doesn't matter. If you want to make God laugh, tell him what your plans are.
And I think that Jonah was more defeatist about it, and he just thought like, what am I gonna do? This city is really corrupt, which is obviously a lack of love, but it's also a lack of trust in God's ability to affect change, and God's
And a
ability.
lack of willingness to recognize the basic value of humanity in other people. It's really the problem that our country is going through right now, is there we are so divided and we are so polarized and we are so judgmental of each other.
Yeah,
We're saying, "Oh, you did this and you did this and you did this and you did this, and that was terrible and awful, and don't you what's your problem? What's wrong with you? Why won't you change?"
yeah,
um, and yet we won't take a look at ourselves,
yeah,
which brings us back to Lent.
yeah. I mean, this whole thing is about Lent, because Lent is about. I mean, Lent is a big topic, but
Lent is a formal process of what we should be doing all
all
the
the
time.
time, which is
Yeah.
repentance, really, repentance and change. I mean, we talked about in my book club a couple weeks ago when we talked about In This House of Breed, we talked about conversion and how conversion is not, people are always like, what's your conversion story? Actually, it's funny because I really want
I
my
was
dad.
knocked off a horse and the scales fell from my eyes.
Well, and my dad is a convert to the faith,
I
and
am.
I think that would be an interesting thing to talk about sometime.
We can
About
talk
like,
about it today if you wish.
well, let's talk about it another time, because I think that's a good topic in and of itself. But conversion is really an ongoing process throughout our whole life. Like conversion is not something that happens once. It's not like when you were baptized and confirmed in the Catholic Church, that's when your conversion started.
That's when I became perfect and there was no more growth available to me.
Even for people like me who were like baptized as a baby, raised in the Catholic faith, I have, especially for me, it's actually, I have to take responsibility for that faith at some point. I can't just rest on the faith of my parents, because when we baptize infants, we, like, the parents are saying, I'm going to take on the responsibility to raise my child in this faith. But that doesn't, you can't do that forever. Like at some point, your faith has to become your own and you have to grow into it. And like, you
And
have
there was something that Jordan Peterson said. He said, the world is so difficult. Life is so difficult. You have to keep running just to stay in the same place.
Yeah.
And that's what Lent is about, is saying, are you running fast enough? Are you going to ever get to where you need to go? Where do we need to go? What's the purpose of life? What does the Baltimore Catechism say?
To know, love, and serve God in this earth and share his eternal happiness in heaven.
That's right. That's got to be our aim. And so Lent is a process of, the church says, hey, time to take a step back from your life. Take a look. Are you actually acting in a way that's going to make that happen? Are you heading toward that? Or are you sinning? Is sin getting in your way? It's interesting because I didn't realize that the word, this is something else I learned from Jordan this week. The word for sin in the New Testament is hamartia, which is a reference to missing the mark in archery.
Yeah, missing the
So it just means that you are not heading toward, you're not heading in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to take a look, we have to take a step back and say, am I heading in the right direction? This reminds me also of, I had a client over at the mental health who was just, he had gone through a couple decades of disability, but he was just so bright and just so intuitive about things that I was surprised that he wasn't able to find his way out beforehand. But he made a lot of progress when we were talking. But he said he had been married previously, and his wife was a missile guidance engineer, which sounds like a very sophisticated job. But he said it really comes down to two processes: move forward and adjust for errors. Mm. So he said, really, that's kind of a secret to life, isn't it? You need to keep moving forward. You need to keep progressing toward whatever it is that you're going toward. And as Jordan Peterson says, the nobler your aim, the better your life will be. Mm-hmm. So you need to move forward, and then you need to adjust for errors. And that's what Lent is. Lent is a process of taking a step back and saying, am I moving toward heaven? Am I going to know, love, and serve God here so that I can enjoy his company forever in heaven? Yeah. Or am I letting the world, the flesh, and the devil get in the way? You know, keep me from being able to really aim my missile in the direction it needs to go.
Yeah. It's kind of like how every year people make this is like a secularized version. Every year people make New Year's resolutions where they're like, I'm gonna eat better, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna get more sleep.
You take that, you take one day to look at how did my whole year go?
Yeah.
And you oh boy.
That's kind of like a pretty lame version of like making adjustments and saying like, I resolved to do all this stuff. And I mean, like that, it's better than not ever having any self-analysis at all. Like to make a New Year's resolution is to say, I have
a little is better than nothing, but it's not much better.
But I mean, like you have to, I think the problem with New Year's resolutions and why most people fall off the bandwagon of their New Year's resolutions by February, by about this time, is that a lot of times the goals that people are making with those things, the reason behind it is like pretty selfishly motivated or just, worldly motivated, whatever. If it's like, I'm going to lose weight and work out more and eat better, it's usually because.
And if I'm going to be selfish, I'm going to be selfish in an easier way than that.
Yeah, like eating whatever I want.
Instead of saying, oh, I'm going to work out and eat right, I'm going to sit on the sofa and eat apple fritters all day, every day. That, if I'm going to be selfish, that's the way I'm going to be selfish.
Yeah. Because
So you got to have a higher
yeah.
aim than that. You've got to have something to believe in, something beyond yourself. Because if yourself becomes the God, if your stomach becomes the God, if
Yeah.
your appearance becomes the God that you are serving, it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
It's gonna fall apart. It's not worthy of worship.
Yeah.
And so many of the things that we get involved in are just not worthy of worship. And it's interesting because Lent, obviously, to speak to its origins, Lent Lent was initially the build up to Easter.
Yeah.
Build
I
up
was gonna say,
to
like, we should take one step back really quick and just explain, if somebody doesn't know what Lent is. Lent is a season of the Catholic Church. It's
40 days.
It's basically the 40 days minus Sundays before Easter. So it's really like 46 days that we use it as a time of repentance and change to try to get to the point where we're celebrating the huge feast of Easter.
Prepare to be worthy of celebrating that holiest of holy days.
Yeah. Because Easter, I mean, Christmas is like a huge celebration.
It's fun.
Yeah. Secularly and religiously.
It's fun to celebrate the birth of Christ.
Yeah.
But let's face it, everybody was born. How many people raised from the dead? You can count them on maybe one hand out of the billions of people.
So how many people raised from the dead through their own power because they were God? That's
I'm
the real
thinking
question.
there's one.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's only that one.
Yeah.
That makes Easter pretty darn special.
Yeah.
It was a singularity. It was a singular moment.
And not only that, it's the entire moment that our faith rests upon. Because
exactly. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, everything else is just a bunch of hoo-ha. That's what St. Paul said. You know, if there is no resurrection of the body, all this stuff is for nothing.
Then Jesus was just a great teacher who taught us things, but like he's not God. And actually, if he didn't raise from the dead, then what we do every day or every week or however often we go to mass is celebrated every day throughout the world, but every day we sacrifice Jesus's body on the altar to God, because we say he was the Lamb of God, the sinless Lamb of God. It's funny, right now I'm still listening to the Bible in a Year podcast from Father Mike. It's amazing. If you haven't listened to it, you should really listen to it. You don't even have to start at the beginning. You can just pick up whenever and finish it anytime. But right now we're talking.
I want to skip right to the end.
Well, the end hasn't come out.
I don't want to do all the dirty work. I want to get right to the dessert.
But right now we're reading Exodus and Leviticus in at the same time.
Oh, definitely not going for Leviticus.
But Leviticus is great because guess what? Everything is about, you take the spotless lamb, you take it's talking about Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. You take the two lambs, you put all the sins of the people on the lamb, and you sacrifice it, and you sprinkle the blood of the lamb on the people, and you are atoning for your sins because of it. Guess what? We do that every day in the Mass. We are putting our sins on the head of the spotless lamb, who is Jesus Christ, and we are killing him with our sin, and we are drinking the blood of the new covenant, the new and everlasting covenant, and we are becoming sinless. I mean, it's always a process of becoming, but he has redeemed our sins so that we can repent and turn our life toward God so that we can live forever. That's the whole, if that didn't happen, then Christianity is idolatry.
It's because just an empty shell.
We are worshiping somebody who's not God. And that is, yeah. So anyway, that was
a great waste of time.
Yeah.
As C.S. Lewis said, it either means everything or it means nothing.
Yeah.
Is that C.S. Lewis or T.S. Eliot? One of those S guys.
I mean, C.S. Lewis, basically, he talked about like the Lord, liar, or lunatic trilemma, they call it, which is basically Jesus is either a liar who claimed to be God and wasn't.
So he's wicked.
So he's wicked.
Which doesn't seem it doesn't seem like a wicked tree would bear as much good fruit as he has. So,
or he was a lunatic, meaning he was a crazy person. I think there's pretty good evidence that that is not true, because crazy people aren't usually very internally consistent.
right.
And Jesus was, if anything, very
they're disturbed. Yeah.
Yeah. Or he was the Lord. I mean, he claimed to be the Lord, and yeah, I just don't know how far.
And he didn't make strident claims about that. He just said, "What do you see? Tell me what you see." You know.
Yeah.
And, and Peter said, "You're the Christ." It's like, bingo.
Yeah. But I mean, like all of us,
I think we have a bingo.
Like all
we made
of us,
a bingo.
Peter forgets that, like, the very next chapter, he's the one.
And that's why we have to have Lent every year.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we forget that.
Even the people who were hanging out with him, who were there seeing all the stuff he did, are still forgetting. It's like in Exodus, the constant story of Exodus is God provides for the people, and the people immediately get hungry or thirsty and say, why did you
lead us out? Where is this God who's supposedly doing all these miracles? Where's your miracles now, God? I'm hungry.
Why didn't you let us die in Egypt as a slave? Like that is our mentality. It's like we praise and worship God as long as things are going well. The second something doesn't go well, we forget and we say God has abandoned us. That's
we're a bunch of stiff-necked whiners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have a hard time saying thank you when we get blessed, and we have a hard time having faith when we start to not have those consolations all the time. Yeah. That's why people like Mother Teresa were amazing. Mm-hmm. She had 40 years of aridity of the spirit where she felt like she wasn't getting any consolation, and yet she maintained her faith. Mm-hmm. She's like Job. It's like, why don't you just curse the Lord and die? Because your life kind of sucks. Yeah. Why don't you just curse the Lord and die? And he's like, if I curse the Lord and die, then what do I have?
Well, and he says, I think it says in Job somewhere, like, I was born from dust, and
and to dust I shall return.
And that's what we say on Ash Wednesday. We say, you are made from dust, and to dust you shall return, which is an extremely important thing to remember.
Yeah, that's deep. That's really deep.
Yeah, because it's
in a lot of ways. And because it says you got nothing to be proud of in and of yourself. Mm-hmm. You got nothing to claim for yourself. Everything you have that has been given to you, mm-hmm. even your life is imposed on you, because you're really just dust. You don't have any claim to life. You've been given life. Yeah. And guess what? This dusty life is going to come to an end. Mm-hmm. So think about where you're heading. Think about what you need to get accomplished while you mm-hmm. still have this dusty life.
Yeah, because the only accomplishments that are going to matter, the only things that you're going to take with you are the good deeds and the good actions and the good, obviously I'm not saying we can earn our way to heaven or whatever, because obviously we can't. We can only get there because Jesus has redeemed us, right?
We can only love our way to heaven. Love is the only thing that's gonna persist. And if we only love ourselves, and if we say, "Oh, my will be done," not your will be done, my will be done, then we're already in hell. We're already in hell, and it's just a matter of time before our life becomes a living hell. And that's clear throughout the history of man. That's what Jordan Peterson says. Is it doesn't. He says flat out, it really doesn't matter if God exists or not. Mm-hmm. This Bible and this process and these traditions have developed over 3,000 years of lived experience through a variety of conditions. This is the meta wisdom of life. This is how we can understand what life is about and how to live it.
Yeah.
And ignore that at your peril.
Yeah.
It's like you get an owner's manual with something and you say, I'm just going to kind of figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
Well, that's one way to do it. And guess what? You're going to void your warranty.
Yeah. You can't tell me to put gasoline in my car. I'm going to put canola oil in there. I don't care. Like, see how far that gets you.
I'm going to put water in there and trust Jesus to turn it into gasoline.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. So the original Lent was Jesus going out into the desert for 40 days to prepare himself for his ministry.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't to prepare himself for really the crucifixion, was it? No, it was to prepare for his ministry. He had to get himself properly oriented.
Yeah.
He had to practice his archery, get his aim right.
I mean, the only way we can serve and minister to others is if we are in right relation to God, right? Like,
right.
If we're not in right relation to God, everything that we are going to do is going to be fruitless. Like Jonah. I mean, we're going to be aiming at the wrong thing, and we're going to be steering other people towards the wrong thing. So we better, before we are trying to aim other people and telling other people what to do, it's like Jordan Peterson says in 12 Rules for Life, before you start throwing stones, you better make sure your house isn't made of glass. Like, before you try to fix the world, you better make sure that you have a right ordered relationship with truth and with reality and with God.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you start to point out the speck of dust in somebody else's eye, make sure you get the beam out of your own.
Yeah.
So Jesus goes out into the desert and he fasts for 40 days and 40 nights, right?
Yeah.
And he's tempted by the devil. The devil comes in and says, hey, why go through all this pain? Hey, dude, life can be so much nicer than this.
Yeah.
Just do what feels good. Don't you want to eat something? Aren't you a little bit hungry? You haven't eaten for all these days. You must be starving. Come on, command these stones to become bread, and then things will be so much nicer.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, if God wanted those to be bread, God would have made those bread. If the Father wanted those to be bread, those would have been bread.
Yeah.
I chose to come out here because man does not live by bread alone.
Yeah.
But by every word that comes from the mouth of God.
Yeah.
And he wanted to become more truly the word and somewhat less the bread, so that he was able in the long run to become the bread of life. So he has to face that first temptation, the temptation of, okay, what about your flesh? Right?
Yeah.
And then the devil says, what else does he say? He takes him up on the top of a high mountain and says, everything you see, you can have it. Just say the word. It's all under my control, which sadly is true. That the devil is really kind of the dominant spirit in the world.
Yeah. I mean,
except in our hearts. If we keep the Spirit of God alive in our hearts, and if we allow him, and if we don't offend him and chase him out of our hearts with our sin, we can be the temples of God. But otherwise it's mainly diabolical. You look around and you see a lot of trouble in the world.
Yeah.
So Jesus, the devil takes Jesus up on the mountain and says, all these kingdoms can be yours. You want some, how about some fortune and fame? You want some of that? And Jesus says, no, if that's what I was supposed to do, I would have come I wouldn't have come as a baby in a manger.
Yeah.
That's for sure. You
He
know,
would have
that's
come
not
as,
that's not how the emperor rolls into town.
yeah, remember in Aladdin, when he makes his wish to become the Prince Ali, he comes in riding elephants and throwing
Right.
coins. I mean, it's like he just wishes to become a prince, and that's what he is. He's got 70 white golden monkeys and all this stuff. Like he's got his whole barrage, his whole menagerie in front of him. Like
His whole posse. He's got a posse.
Jesus could have just come.
Jesus goes out alone, alone with God, to face the troubles of the world.
Well, and he came into this life in a family, as a baby in a family. Like, he didn't want to come as a giant unicorn blowing fire out of his mouth. Like, he could have, but he didn't. Like, he came as a man because he wanted us to be able to follow in his footsteps, because he wanted
to be somebody to love, not somebody to fear.
Well, and like
there's enough to be afraid of already. We need more love, and that really is what Jesus said, right? We need more love. If you're not making it in this world, it's probably nobody's fault. You need to love more. You need to love more. You need to love yourself more. You need to love other people more. You need to stop thinking about yourself all the time. Stop whining. Stop crying. Stop shrinking away. Stop saying, oh, it's too hard for me. Do it. Just get out there and live your life. Do what you can do.
Yeah.
Get up there and dance your dance. You don't have to be great at it.
Yeah.
Another thing Mother Teresa said was, we're not expected to accomplish great things. We're expected to do small things with great love.
Yeah.
And that's all we really are called to do. We just have to keep loving more.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what Lent is about, is that we should give up everything that's getting in the way of love. You know, people do these simple Lenten things like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to not eat meat on Fridays. That's going to be important. What's the point? If it doesn't help you to love more, it's an empty gong, right? Yeah. Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And if you can do all kinds of wild things, but if you don't have love in your heart, it doesn't mean a thing.
Yeah.
Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing.
So the world, the flesh, and the devil are the things that get in the way of our journey to loving, knowing, and serving God in this earth and being with him forever in heaven afterwards. So when we go
and
through
he
life,
always appeals through the world, through the flesh, through the devil. The appeal is always, make of yourself as a god. That was the whisper in the garden. God knows that you won't die. God knows that you'll be like him if you eat this fruit. God knows that God's just jealous of you, and he wants to protect his sovereignty and doesn't want you to have any power.
Yeah.
And he convinces us that, yeah, maybe I should be God. Yeah. Why not?
Well, and like I personally struggle a lot with, like, I'm kind of a control freak in my life.
No.
Like, I struggle with, like, as the head of like, I mean, it's weird saying I'm the head of the household, but like
You are.
I run the house. Like, I do the vast majority of the cooking.
You're the chief operating officer.
Yeah, and like I mean, like, my husband and I come to agreements about how we want to run things, but I am the one who's putting those things into practice. Like, I am the one who's doing the majority of the raising of the children, while my husband is.
You're the president. He's the Constitution. You're the executive officer, and he's the Constitution.
I execute, and he legislates. That's pretty close to accurate. But I mean, like, well, and like, we do come to agreements on things, and like, I usually get my way on things because I'm the one executing. Like, I'm the one who
You
is
just sign an executive order.
yeah, exactly. So like, but I struggle with like with trusting God and not when like I get angry when I don't get my way. And like right now it's really hard because my husband is applying for a lot of jobs. He's going through a big job interview process. And it's hard because it's like I have very little control, pretty much none. I have almost no control over where he's going to get a job offer, where we're going to be living in, you know, later this year. And it's like, it's hard to accept those things because and this is not the first time this has happened. We've moved 5 or 6 times since we've gotten married 7 years ago, you know, like
And wherever you go, there you are.
and guess what? Like God has worked it out for the good every single time. But still, every single time I struggle and I say, I don't want to move. I have good friends here that I love. And, you know, like my kids have like situations that they're in, like homeschooling groups and whatever that they love and they have friends. And it's really hard to say
As
goodbye.
Jordan Peterson says, what if there's snakes? What if there's snakes in the future?
Because the unknown.
Now that I can anticipate the future, there's all these future snakes that are hard to deal with. The snakes that are present are hard enough, but the snakes in the future are driving me crazy.
And it's, I mean, like moving is such a huge pain in the butt. Like there's just so many things about it that I don't love, but it's like I pray every day that I will just accept God's will that he has for me, because I know that his is going to be way better than mine. And once again, it's a thing of, guess what, Zoe? I'm going to be moving one way or the other, because we can't, like, where my husband gets a job offer is where we have to live, because that's where they're going to pay us to be. And it's like, I can go move kicking and screaming and fighting the whole way, or I can say, I'm going to see this as God's will for me. I'm going to accept it voluntarily and move forward and say, there is something, wherever I end up, there is something there that God wants me to accomplish. And I'm going to accept it willingly and work to accomplish that the best that I can do. And like, it's much easier said than done, but that's like, right. That's the goal, you know? And it's like, there's so many things in my life that need repentance and change and acceptance of God's will. And this is what Lent is about, you know, like that is what Lent is about.
That reminds me of 2 different things. One is when Father Hasbro was he was the president of Notre Dame for a couple decades or something. When he retired, they said, hey, you've been the president of Notre Dame for a long time. You must have had a lot of experiences. What have you learned from that? He said, I can recount it in 6 words. God is God and I'm not.
Yeah, I mean that is like, that's the lesson that I have to learn.
That's what I learned. And the other thing is, one that was on the Catholic school back in the day was, everybody wants to serve God, but most want to be the most want to be the manager. You know, yeah. Most people want to be the one who's directing the action.
Yeah. They want to be.
And we've got no patience. We've got no willingness to put up with hardships. You know, as soon as things go wrong in the desert, it's like, you let me out here in the desert to starve. Thanks a lot, God.
I mean, like, I think it's like when I don't know if you remember, but when we were living in Iowa, I had just had a baby, and every time I have a baby, I kind of have a hard time. Having a baby is a big, as a control freak, having a baby is a very huge adjustment to life. And even though I love having my babies and like, I want to have another one right now, I'm waiting for God to send me another child right now. Like, I love having children, but they are, I mean, it's a hard adjustment to that, because
it's the hardest job you'll ever love.
Well, and it's so much stuff that's out of your control. But my husband
totally
got he decided to transfer schools right after that. So like very shortly after I had my baby, we made the decision that we were going to move. And it was so hard because I was like, I've just made friends here. I love this place that we're living. Like, this is really hard. And so I was really upset about it. And it was definitely one of those things where I went kicking and screaming into it. But now it's like, yeah, do I love my apartment? No. I'm kind of excited. Like, I don't really love the state that we're living in. There's a lot of things about it that I really don't like. But I love the friends that I've made here. I love my church community that I've made here. And if I had resisted hard enough and said, I'm not moving, it's like, I would have never had all these amazing experiences that I had in the last year. And once again, it's like, I feel the same thing. It's like, oh, I don't want to give up this church community that I love. I don't want to give up all these friendships that I've made, but it's like, I think I've learned enough, at least a little bit at this point, to say, like, all of these times that we've moved and done these different things, God has known that something better is on the other side. And so I'm going to accept it and say, I can't see.
You're going to have faith that he will provide.
Yeah.
That wherever you go, there'll be good people to meet, good things to do, meaningful things, good experiences.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about kicking and screaming. When I moved to North Carolina, there was it seemed like there was a few people in my family who didn't want to come down here. They didn't want to give it a chance.
Yeah.
They were addicted to the comfort and the routine of living where we used to live.
Yeah.
And so now it's completely different.
Yeah.
Now you ask them, what's the best thing that ever happened to you? Well, moving.
Yeah.
Moving was probably the best thing that happened. I had a lot more experiences. I did a lot more things. I grew as a person. Yeah, we need to have challenges in order to grow as a person, and we need to constantly challenge ourselves. And that's what Lent does.
And that's what, that's the point I was going to make. Like, we have these addictions, we have these control issues, we have these, like, just things that we feel like we can't give up. So, like, let's get so the church gives us basically kind of 3 ways during Lent that they encourage us to change, and to change our hearts and to change our minds, to try to bring ourselves more in line with the goal of becoming more like Christ.
They don't tell us, hey, figure it out.
Yeah.
They say, here's a good place to start.
So the 3 ways are fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. Those are the 3 ways that we're encouraged to try to.
And what's the basis of what do those 3 things automatically do?
Well, so I would think it would be actually, hold on.
Those 3 things, from my point of view, is the basis of those 3 things is saying no to yourself, dying to self, saying, no, I'm not God. And I'm not the author of my life. God is the author of my life. Lord, I'm putting myself in your hands. Lead me, Lord. Help me to bloom where I'm planted. Help me to do what I need to do to be my best self.
Yeah.
And so that's my prayer. Fasting. No, I'm not my stomach. No, I'm not food. Food is not my God. I can enjoy food, but it's just, man does not live by bread alone.
Yeah.
And so I need to set that aside. The great story about St. Francis of Assisi, whenever he started to feel like he was enjoying his food too much, he would sprinkle ashes on his bread so that it became bitter. He didn't want his bread to be more joy for him than God was.
Yeah.
He wanted to guard against that, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So we got the prayer, we got the fasting, we got the almsgiving. Give up some of the crap that you have in your life that you think is important. These material things, don't love stuff and use people. Use stuff and love people.
Yeah.
Give some of your stuff away. Give some of your time, your talent, and your treasure to other people. Don't be so dang selfish all the time.
And it's
selfishness and pride and self-importance is the root of all evil, really, because it gets in the way of us being humble.
Yeah. Well, and it's good practice because, once again, you can't take anything on this earth with you, right? No material things are coming with you. So you better get used to giving that stuff away now.
Can't I take my
No,
Packer cup?
you cannot. So this was a
I
quote.
want my Packer cup in heaven.
This was a quote from Wikipedia.
Me and Vince Lombardi sitting around drinking coffee.
This was a quote
Saying, you have a block here, you have a block here, and you go right up and...
Okay, this is a quote from Wikipedia that I thought was really good. So I don't know if you remember Father Dan, the priest that we always had growing up. He said
he was my RCIA director, basically.
I'm not saying do you remember him. I'm saying he would always say this thing, which he would say to us a lot in Catholic school. He would say, God, others, me, I'm number 3. So the three kind of like relationships that we have in this earth is our relationship with God, our relationship with others, and our relationship with self. So the 3 traditional practices to be taken up with renewed vigor during Lent are prayer, which is justice toward God, saying putting your relationship right with God, saying you are in charge and I am not. Fasting, which is justice towards the self, saying I am not my desires. I am not my bodily urges and needs.
Appetites, my hungers, my lusts, my urges.
Yeah. And then almsgiving, which is justice towards neighbors, saying I am going to not just take everything that I can and hold on to it selfishly. I am going to share as much as I can with other people because there are other people. Because once again, everything that I have been given is a gift. I don't own anything. Everything that I have been given is a gift. And so I have a duty to share what I have with others who have been given less for whatever reason. I thought that was really good about saying justice to God.
They've been given less so that I can give some of what I have away, and that can be virtuous.
And
that gives me an opportunity to be virtuous.
Yeah.
And it gives them an opportunity to be humble. Just as when somebody helps me out, it's an opportunity for me to be humble and for them to be virtuous.
Yeah.
But that's what the government does not allow. Totalitarian governments that don't, to speak from the libertarian point of view, that is what totalitarian governments and bossy nanny governments don't allow, is they don't trust that people are going to be virtuous and take care of their neighbors in need.
Yeah.
How did all these neighbors get here before you got here, government? How were they taken care of before that?
Yeah.
Out of the goodness of people's hearts.
Yeah.
You start to deny the goodness in people's hearts. The goodness in people's hearts start to wither, and they just become cogs in a society that's mechanistic rather than humanistic.
Yeah. And I mean, we do have to be reminded of, like, every commandment in the Bible are things that are, in some ways, I mean, not everything is intuitive, because there are things that are not intuitive, but they're the ones that are like in relation to our relations with others, I feel like are things that are intuitive, but things that we need to be constantly reminded of, right? Like it says,
love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah. But I mean, like right now we're reading
all the law and the prophets
are summed up. And I mean, we're reading Exodus and Leviticus right now in the Bible in a year, and it says it's really, let me read this thing because I thought it was really interesting. Hold on. It was talking about, like, Father Mike keeps pointing out that, like, what these rules really are about how to be just with other people, right? And they talk about
how to live in right relationship. Yeah,
and
it is right and just.
So in Exodus 23, it's talking about basically laws of justice, and it says we're called to be just and fair, especially to the poor, which means don't favor the poor just because they're poor. Don't give them extra treatment in the law just because they're poor. But also don't take advantage of them because they're poor and they can't fight against you. Like, and
don't disregard them and just curry favor from people who can pay you back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what corruption is, right? It's giving extra regard to the people who
Yeah.
who can take care of
It's
you.
cronyism. It's
Yeah.
cronyism. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Are there more? I think we're going kind of long. Do we want to? Is there?
We are going kind of long. It's a pretty deep subject. Maybe
Yeah.
we can cut out. Maybe we can cut out some of the football stuff and
Maybe.
keep the other stuff. I actually wrote down a lot of stuff about different things that when I was thinking about Lent. Remember your dust. That's the Memento Mori.
Yeah.
Remember that you must die. That
Yeah.
gives our life meaning. If we don't remember that we're going to die, our days become pointless. Our days become groundhog days, that we just live over and over in a rote way without any sense that we're making any kind of progress or needing to make any kind of change.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of that Groundhog Day movie. I don't know, you've seen it, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that he tries to do the same things over and over, and he tries different programs. And when he finally comes to prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, that's when the day moves on for him.
Yeah.
That's when he starts to progress in life. Otherwise, he was stuck in the same stuff, being selfish, being, completely given over to his pleasures, chasing women and stealing things and then becoming completely nihilistic and trying to kill himself in about 80 different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about Memento Mori too is like what that is when we put the ashes on our forehead, like Ash Wednesday. I didn't even get to the celebrations of this week, which were our Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, which is kind of a big deal for us because the church that we go to is called St. Bernadette's. Anyway, I won't go into all that. But Valentine's Day, which is pretty much a made-up holiday, but there was Valentine's.
That's not a feast.
Well, there's the saints.
That's a Hallmark. That's a Hallmark brand.
Saint Cyril and Saint Methodius,
Let's sell some cards and some chocolates,
which are the patrons of that day. They were kind of a big deal, but anyway. And then Mardi Gras, which is when we have a big blowout right before Lent, because we can't go into all the fasting without a big feast.
You got to use up. You hate to waste the stuff, so you got to use it up.
You got to use all the water and the meat.
Use up all your sweets, all your fats.
Yeah.
Get all that stuff out of here. Sweep all the yeast out of your house.
Yeah.
So that the leaven of the spirit can actually take over.
So we can enjoy, use up all the sweets in your house so that we can enjoy the sweetness of God when he comes when he comes into his full glory at the resurrection. But then Ash Wednesday is the very beginning of Lent. Ash Wednesday is the day where we get the ashes on our forehead and they say, remember you are dust and to dust you shall return, right? That's not only doing justice to God and saying you are God and I am not. Everything that I have is given to me. But it's also doing justice to ourselves to say, hey, remember you're going to die. Remember you're going to die. Remember you're going to die, because it's easy to forget that.
It's hard to be humble when you're as cool as I am, but even I have to be humble.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be here forever.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to be here forever.
Is there anything else you want
in Joe Biden's basement?
Is there anything else you want to say about Lent? I thought maybe I have my idea.
Well, there's one more. These 40. This 40 number is important.
Yeah.
In the Noah story, there's 40 days and 40 nights of rain and flooding to prepare the earth for the cleansing that needed to happen at that point. Okay. And so we need 40 days and 40 nights of cleansing before we can be baptized. That's what really leads up. When people enter the church, they're baptized on the Easter Vigil.
Yeah.
That's a big day for baptism, is to be able to have your sins cleansed away, have a fresh start, be able to have the Spirit in you, and be able to clean yourself up so that you can be a temple. you know.
Yeah.
Clean the money changers out, clean all the garbage out, everything that doesn't need to be there, and just let God be in your heart, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, God is humble too. God will let us push him right out of our life if we insist on it.
Yeah.
You know, he keeps giving us chances to come back into our hearts, but he doesn't insist on it. He stands at the door and knocks,
Yep.
but he's not gonna go all ATF and knock the door down and say, "I'm here to take over."
Yeah. As
You're
they
screwing
say,
things up.
as they said, there's a Catholic podcast for kids that I've been listening to with my kids recently called Catholic Sprouts. And as they said on there recently, God is a gentleman. He's not going to knock the door down, but he is going to, he's a gentleman. He's not going to force himself into your life. He made us with wills that can reject him. And being a parent, that's an incredible thing to realize, because it's like, if I could make my kids obey me all the time, like, would I do it? Like, I mean, no, I wouldn't.
That's what Jordan Peterson said.
Yeah.
He said, do we really want our kids to obey? That's what he said about Adam and Eve. They ate of the fruit. Do we really want our kids to be 100% obedient? How are they going to ever have any kind of quality of boldness if they're just 100% obedient, and if they don't find out for themselves? Sometimes you gotta run fast in order to skin your knees, in order to know how fast you can run. And
I understand that, and obviously if I could make my children obey me all the time, I wouldn't want them to, but at the same time it scares me thinking when they grow up, they're going to be able to completely reject God if they want to. They're going to be able to completely decide to make themselves their own God. And it's like,
how do you think God feels about giving us life and saying, well, I'm going to let them decide whether they want to be a part of my family or not?
I know, and that's why I'm saying it's an incredible thing that he did that, because he is perfect love, and perfect love allows you to make those mistakes. Knowing that
because perfect love has no fear.
Yeah, perfect love casts out fear. That's true. So, do we want to talk about do you have ideas?
Well, one more reference to the 40.
Oh, okay. All right.
Jesus spent 40 hours in the grave.
Yeah.
Before he could come back to life. If you look at it, he spent about 40 hours in the grave.
Yeah.
Or 40 hours dead, let's say, before he came back to life. So again, that 40 hours needed to happen. There needed to be 40 hours of absence, of sorrow, in order to be able to get to the joy of Easter. And that's what Lent is supposed to be about, is let's choose some sorrow. Let's, like you said before, let's choose our pain. Let's choose our battles. Let's pick some battles that are worthy of us, and let's go out and fight them, and let's fight against ourselves, against the world, against the flesh, against the devil. Let's take a look at that stuff. Let's take a look at what do I owe God? What do I owe myself? What do I owe my brothers and sisters that I'm not doing? How am I not living up to that? How am I not paying attention to what I need to be doing in the world? And how am I not acting on that? And how can I be more aware of it? How can I be more active in service? How can I be more charitable? You know? And prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, great way to do that. I tell you what, it's always amazing to me. I'm not big on fasting. It's always amazing to me on Ash Wednesday and on Good Friday how much my mind is initially on food, and then how much, once you just say no, food is off the table, literally. How much my mind can be on better things. You have to give up lesser things to take better things. It's like the monkey nut, right? You remember the monkey nut analogy?
With the
Yeah,
in the jar or whatever.
yeah. The monkey hunters take a jar, a narrow neck jar, where the monkey can only put his hand into the jar if it's open,
Yeah.
uh, and slide it in. But if they're holding on to something, they can't pull it out.
Yep.
And so they make it heavy or they bolt it down, and then they put something in there that the monkey really wants.
Mm-hmm.
And
the monkey will never let it go.
and the monkey won't let it go at the cost of his own life. That's
Yep.
really what addiction is.
Yep.
Is valuing that thing so much that it becomes more than your life. It becomes more than what you're living for.
Yeah.
You know, you start to live for that stuff, that thing, that whatever that you're seeking, instead of living for life and living for the goodness of life and living for God.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's what Lent is letting go of that monkey nut and walking away from that and saying, I don't need to look back, because that's Sodom, that's sin, and that's trouble. And I don't need to feel bad about that. I can just let that go. I'm glad I realized that I was so out of balance that I was doing that.
Yeah.
And so we try to get our life back in balance. We go to confession, which we haven't talked about confession, but we do have a Lenten obligation to have a confession at least this one time a year.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we can talk.
Which seems to be a little skimpy, a little meager on the confession.
That's like doing the New Year's Eve, like
right.
Look at my whole year and try to figure out.
I'm just going to examine my conscience once a year and hope that can be meaningful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think so. You know what? There's a lot of life that goes on in a year. That's what I tell people that in therapy all the time. I say, we can just do therapy 1 hour a week or every 2 weeks or whatever, but that's not going to get you very far. There's 168 hours in a week. If you don't start to get more conscious of living your life in a mentally hygienic way,
mm-hmm.
which really is what Lent is about, is
spiritually hygienic
way. That you're not going to make much progress.
Yeah.
So you need to put a few more hours into it and be more aware. The popes go to confession every day, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that's a tradition for them. They go every day. They examine their conscience every day. They try to recorrect their path every day.
Yeah. I mean, I started a practice this year of trying to prayer journal every day. And the 4 things I write in my prayer journal every day, which this has been really helpful for me. And I kind of came up with this on my own, but I have 4 sections. The first section is just thanking God for all the things
Gratitude.
that day. Gratitude, no matter if my day was bad or if my day was good, there are things every single day that I can thank him for. And I thank him for those things every day. Second one is just adoration. This one is hard for me because it's not saying you are good because you gave me something. It's saying you are good because you are God and I am not. And it's just pure adoring of God for who he is. That part is hard for me. That's the part that I'm still getting better at.
That's the mystical. Yeah, that is more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, because so often we say, oh,
because we're so corporeal, we're so bodily. We need something, and that's why when you're in the desert, you don't remember. Wow, God let us out of slavery in Egypt, and he made the sea part, and he drowned the Egyptians. But what has he done for me lately?
Exactly.
I'm hungry now. I want a pot pie.
So Thanksgiving, adoration. This third part is supplication. So that's where I ask for things, ask for intercessions, whatever. Which is, I mean, good in a way, but it's not the most important part of prayer. And then the fourth part is contrition, where that's basically my examination of conscience and saying, what are the ways that I failed today? Where are the places that I need grace to get better? Because there are so many ways that I cannot get better on my own. I'm trying and I can't do it. And I need God's help to get better. So anyway, I've really enjoyed doing that because it's made me see patterns in my own behavior where I need to be better. It's like you were saying about the popes going to confession every day, like doing, even if it's a little tiny examination of conscience every day of just saying like, where are the parts that I'm habitually failing? Not only is that good prep for Lent, saying like, what are the ways that I need to change?
It's a good everyday practice.
Yeah.
Every day of every year.
Yeah.
Lent is just kind of like it's the church being a good mother and saying, are you eating right? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating your vitamins? Are you getting enough exercise?
Yeah.
You know, that's what Lent is.
Yeah.
Every day it'd be good if we had a little bit more mindfulness about that.
Yeah. But for 40 days we get an in-your-face reminder of it. Do you have anything that you want to share about what you're doing for Lent personally?
I'm giving up sin.
Well, that's good. I think that would be hard to stick with.
I'm probably falling back to a certain extent on my usuals. It'd be good for me to continue to not eat too much sweets. I tend to have a sweet tooth and binge on those, so it's hard for me to not do that. So I'm going to continue to stay away from sweets altogether. I'll probably stop playing Red Dead Redemption 2 because I've been playing a lot of that, and that is a complete time suck.
Yeah,
it's useless and pointless and just a waste of time, and I can be doing other things. I'm prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. That's gonna try to be more available to my kids. Try to spend more time with them. Be less stingy with my time. Be nicer to your mom. Although she makes that hard sometimes. Wow.
People do. So
Father Dan always used to say marriage is like a rock tumbler. You take two of these ugly, snarly, pointy, sharp rocks, you throw them into a tumbler, and then you make them live together for a while, and you let life just work on them, and hopefully if they can stay in the tumbler long enough, they'll come out and they'll be beautiful, polished gems.
That's a nice view of it.
It's a nice metaphor.
Yeah.
But it's not very much fun sometimes to have other rocks knocking you upside your face. It's like, oh. Thank you, Lord. Oh.
Yeah.
I guess I needed that. Oh.
It's like they say what are the 3 rings of marriage or whatever? The engagement
ring, the wedding ring, and the suffer ring.
Suffer ring. Those are the 3 rings of marriage. Hold on. So I'm going to continue doing as far as prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. For prayer, I'm going to continue doing the Bible in a year, which is really good. I wanted to do, they have that, so there's a book called Consoling the Heart of Jesus, which is it's written by the same guy who wrote the Consecration to Mary book.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that for Lent. However, I think with the Bible in a year this year, that kind of has been taking up a lot of my time that I'm able to devote to prayer every day. Unfortunately, I can't devote all my day to prayer because a lot of my day is doing corporal works of mercy for my children.
Pray unceasingly, and if necessary, use words.
So anyway, I'm not going to do that this year. I'm maybe going to do it next year. But in addition to Bible in a year, I'm doing Bishop Barron can you see this the right way?
I can, yes.
Okay, so he has, I did his Advent reflections, which were really good. They're very thought-provoking. He always has like the gospel reading for the day and then like a reflection, and then there's usually a question where you have some like space to write about stuff.
So it's a workbook.
Yeah, I really like these. It's only like $5 from his website or something. So buy 3 or 4 and give them to some people. I really like these. They're really good. As a family, we're doing this thing called the Jesus tree. This is from Catholic Sprouts, which is like a Jesse tree, basically, but instead of, the Jesse tree we do during Advent, which is kind of following from the creation of the world up until when Jesus is born, saying, here is all the things that are leading up to Jesus's birth. This, as far as I know, is
all the things leading up to his death.
Yep, this is the moment of all the moments in Jesus's life leading up to his death and showing like his entire ministry. I'm excited to do this. I haven't done it before.
So it's like the sequel to the Advent.
Yeah. So I'm doing those things for praying. As far as fasting, I'm going to try. There's a good episode of Catholic in a Small Town, which is a good podcast you should check out if you haven't. They talked a lot about fasting in one of their recent episodes. And they talked about how a good Lenten practice is, even if you can't do this every day, even just doing it like Wednesdays and Fridays, whatever, fast from solid food, or if you can, food totally, until 3 p.m. every day. Because 3 p.m. was the moment that Jesus died. So
Hour of mercy. So
you're making a conscious effort to be like, this is a solemn moment in the life of Jesus and whatever. I'm going to try to not eat any solid food until 3 p.m. every day. I'm not
every day.
It's hard. Yes. It's hard for me. I've always been somebody who's been really bad at fasting because for the past 5 years, I've been pregnant or breastfeeding continuously. And that will probably continue for the next 20 years or so. No, not 20 years, but it'll probably be, this is the period of time in my life where that's going to be happening.
Make hay while the sun shines, baby.
And breastfeeding is something that I love, but it makes me very hungry all the time. And it's probably something that I use as an excuse not to fast, but I'm going to at least try to not eat any solid food because they talk about how just chewing things is such like a viscerally pleasant experience. Like we really like to chew things. It's much less like satiating to just have to drink something. So I'm going to try to not have any solid food until 3. I'm also going to fast from like video games. I play a lot of like stupid games on my phone while I'm listening to stuff, like while I'm listening to podcasts or listening to audiobooks.
Candy Crush?
Not Candy Crush, but like just stupid games that are just time wasters. And I feel like
things along those lines.
They take up a lot of my like attention. I'm not usually just like sitting there doing it normally, but like while I'm listening to things. And it's not good to like, I think it's not good for my attention. It's not good for it's just a waste of time. And I feel like
it's kind of a numbing thing.
Yeah,
it takes away the acute knowledge that we are not in control and that there are snakes in the future.
Yeah, it's like taking drugs.
Like I'm not going to pay attention to the snakes in the future. I'm going to do this stupid little puzzle right now because that takes my mind off of that.
Yeah. So I'm giving up those because I feel like it's just stupid and a waste of time. And once again, all the time that I'm given here is a gift and it's not unlimited. And I feel like if I need to be accountable for the time that I'm here, and I can probably be doing something better with that time. So, and then for almsgiving, I'm going to try to, almsgiving is hard for us right now because we don't have any income. So it's hard to give away like money stuff when you don't have income. But I do have a certain amount of stuff set aside every week for groceries. And I usually buy at least 1 or 2 things that I don't actually need, things that I'm just like, oh, that looks cool, I'll buy that from the store, whatever. And it's just like little treats.
It doesn't have to be money.
No, I know that, but
that's why I said, just giving more time to, as a mom, you're giving time away all the time. You're doing works of mercy all the time. You're clothing the naked, you're feeding the hungry, you're changing the poopy. You're
yeah.
Those are works of mercy.
Yeah,
You
I
got
know.
to take credit for those. And
I know.
that's
Well, and that's so
so you don't need to give away money.
I know, but the two things I want to do are I do think like giving money to people is an important thing when I'm given more
Change
than
a diaper with great love in your heart.
Okay, well, I'm getting there. Hold on. The two things I want to do are, first of all, I want to take note of one thing at the store every week that I would normally buy. I'm going to not buy and try to give that money away, which is not a lot, but it's something. I can do something for other people. And I do want to try, this is going to be the really, really hard one for me, try to be more charitable about I want to make a whole episode about this because I think it's really interesting and I have a lot to say about it. But the quote unquote interruptions in my life of my children interrupting my time or whatever. I want to be more charitable about that.
That's what Lent is all about, is
know.
recognizing, oh wait, I had my foreground and my background
Yes.
reversed.
Exactly.
My children are not my interruption.
I
My
know.
children are my life.
Yes.
My children are my life. It's the other stuff that's just noise and whirlwind
Yes.
that seems to be important but really isn't.
If you're willing to talk about this next week, I want to talk about it in terms of, do you remember the book Leaf by Niggle that I showed you
Yeah.
a year and a half ago? If you have time, revisit that this week. I want to, like, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about something else too, but I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about our sanctification comes through our interruptions. And I think that that's something that is especially important during Lent. I think that's a really...
The apparent interruption.
Yes. That's the point. That's the
The
point.
apparent interruptions are when God is knocking on the door and saying, hey, there's really more important things that you can be doing than playing Candy Crush.
All right, we'll save it for next week. We'll talk about it next week. Okay. So that's pretty much what I'm doing for Lent. I might do some other stuff, but that's what I'm going to be doing for now. All right. Well,
Okay.
We'll let you go because we've talked long enough. Thank you for joining us. Have a happy Fat Tuesday and a penitential Ash Wednesday. And yeah,
Make it good. Make it good. God gives us every day to have an opportunity and to cooperate with him. Figure out how you're not cooperating as well as you should and start doing that.
Amen.
That's Lent. There
All
you go. You've got your marching orders. Get out there. Just do it.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
God bless.